My presentation is really about, I suppose, my vision that I see for this space. Now, to me, why this is relevant to you guys is the sense that we're in this space. When you come into this space, number one, we're optimistic, and number two, we're ambitious and we're also patient at the same time. This space typically takes years to evolve. And it's funny that when we see some of the OGs like Mike Nichols yesterday sort of coming involved, we've been involved in this space long before it was popular and long before it was sort of become in everyone's mouth. And to me, it's still really only beginning. There is so much potential for this space to grow, and how it grows through people like you and me, proactively building it, proactively bringing people into the area. So this is our vision for what we see as the future of capital raising. From Wholesale Investors' perspective, you guys may not know this, but we've got a 13-year track record. We launched October 4 to October 8, 2008. If you remember that week, the Dow Jones was actually crashing 18%. We were launching. I remember hosting the launch party, and I remember listening in on a conversation where they didn't know that I was the actual founder, and someone made the comment that these guys are crazy. I can't believe they're launching this right now. They were right, but it also worked in our favor, and you find that sort of doing things in times like pretty much now where there's fear, there's plenty of fear, there's plenty of uncertainty, there's plenty of doubt, it creates an incredible opportunity, and that's what we see. Every single thing we do is about creating an opportunity for tomorrow. Every conversation that we'll have today, every introduction that I want to make, every email we send, every text message, everything we do, every bit of software we build is about creating an opportunity which doesn't exist today and sets up for another opportunity for tomorrow. That sits at the core of our DNA. Everything that we think about is how we can empower innovation, capital, and ambition. I said, if you can find one part of our company that's not aligned with those two key areas, let me know. But that is basically what sits at our core. So when you think about our decision making for what we do, whether it be pushing into the UK, where most people don't know, we've got a team of 7 in the UK now. And it's been great to watch that business grow there. In Singapore, in I think 3 weeks' time, 2.5 weeks' time, we've got over 400 attendees registered for their event. Nearly 100 of the top VCs, that are actually coming along to that event as well. I said we've spent that time building the bridges between countries as well. It could have been much easier for me to sit at home and be a one-man operation, sending out emails, doing promotions. But everything we do sits at the core from those aspects. And in fact, what else underpins that is how we can utilize technology, platform, and partners as part of that process. So as a final component, everything we're thinking about is the enabling of cross-border collaborations. What is nice is every single one of you potentially have people in your networks that are now based in the US, that are now based in Singapore, that are now based in the UK. The idea is how can we actually make this more open, make this more visible, and make this more sort of relational across those different cross-border opportunities. The other thing most people don't know, I've had 10 of our clients achieve unicorn status in that time, which is incredible. There isn't actually that many sort of VCs or investment groups in this actual region that have been able to achieve that just from us providing our service. Yesterday, you guys would have seen an announcement about, I think it was Mike Cannon-Brooks or Scott Farquhar, one of the guys, doing a deal with Gen X Power. We literally had them on sessions that we were doing a few months ago. But actually we've been working with Gen X for years. What I love about every company that you see out there today, for me, they're the examples, whether they be the yield companies, whether they be the fund companies. One of the companies that we work with that people know is Folkestone that ended up getting acquired by Charter Hall. We worked with them when they were a 20 to 30 million market cap. To me, when I look at the companies that are presenting today, they're the future ones that are going to be making the headlines. They're the ones that are going to be doing the announcement of deals. We just get an incredible opportunity to see them years before most other people get to see them. And a lot of people in our ecosystem, been with us for years, would have seen those actual stories play out. Now, of course, it is the innovation space, and not all go that well, but that's how this space is, But effectively, we're seeing now, I think, 68 exits in total. Typically, when we deal with investors, the common thing that you guys are asking for us is, I want you to introduce me to the good deals. And my comment is always the same, is I don't know what your version of a good deal is, because everyone's got, basically this is a marketplace. And that's typically how it operates. And then every company will come and say to us, I want you to introduce me to the good investors. And then my feedback's always the same: is I don't know what I said I can introduce you to good investors, but that doesn't mean that you're relevant for them. And that's what really drives this space. And then there's a fundamental question that we have is how can we actually facilitate the scaling of capital raising? Like John Sharp yesterday, everything he thinks about is how do you scale investing? Everything we think about is how do you actually scale capital raising and then remove friction from the process. So from the software perspective, how do you save time, save money, improve efficiency? That's the principles from our decision making. And then the last part is how do you do it globally? And you'll see that in the next 6 months for us with some of the announcements coming out. So this is, I showed this internally to our team members, and now I show it to everyone, because effectively this was the actual issue we had as a business, right? In effect that you can't scale doing this. You know, you can make it impactful and meaningful for people during 3 days, but it's incredibly hard to scale. So for the last 3 years, we've been working diligently on setting ourselves up so that we can actually scale what we can do from a platform perspective, and then have what we do in person as a complement to what we actually do online. And effectively, this period that we've been in is effectively this transition period, really for the last sort of 3 years, as we just make the incremental steps. And that's not easy to do when you've got a business that's fighting things like COVID and also going through these periods as well. But also at the same time is in growing our team, introducing into another country, etc. And then also we acquired our own AFSL as well. So all these things take place over a period of time. But to me, that's such an important milestone for us, because effectively in the next sort of 6 months, we'll be able to break out of that sort of area of transition for us because of some of the implementations we will make from a platform perspective. Now, our version of how we see the problem with our space is that effectively it's super inefficient, right? And it's actually, most of it's actually manual in the way in which people operate. And it's like, I know Dan, so I get an introduction and then now I can have another conversation. Whereas to me, you know, that's pretty much capital raising 1.0. It's who do you know and who can introduce you. You know, for me, I see our version as sort of capital raising 3. But effectively, if you look at this whole process is inefficient and it's very frustrating for most people. It's one of those things where it sits on your shoulders and you don't know what an issue it is until you actually don't experience it, right? And then you understand what it's like to do something different. And for me, when I see our solution, I said, it needs to be software driven. It needs to enable the ecosystem. There needs to be intelligence on both sides, both for founders and also investors as well. And to me, the other part is the whole thing needs to be integrated. So our position is that vertical area of sort of capital raising and venture investment needs to be completely aligned to actually assist the ecosystem to grow faster, because the ecosystem can't scale as fast if it's reliant on mate who knows mate who provides introduction to other mate, which is typically how it's been done so far. And if you look at the elements of our investment into AI, if you spend any time with me, you'll find me introducing you to someone, right? My brain is a natural matchmaker. So we thought, how can we actually deconstruct what happens in my brain naturally and then overlay that across a platform perspective, utilizing the data that we've been able to capture for the last sort of 9 years. That's got some relevance, and then the data which we are able to capture going forward. That's how we've thought about our AI and ML. And I'll give some examples to that. And the funniest thing about this space is it's so driven by transaction fees. You know, my belief is you'll see over the next sort of 5 to 10 years that the platform approach and the subscription approach will become the actual dominant force as the market starts to change, and also as the generational trend starts to change in this space as well. And we've seen that with every other industry. So how we operate, as I said, is as a subscription business. And then the last part is making sure that both advisors, investors, and founders have the tools, because the beautiful thing about investors, and you guys know this, is that one day you're buying something, one day you're investing something, and one day you're selling something else. Everyone's always wearing multiple hats. No one's ever just wearing one hat in this space. Or you may be an industry participant, and you could be a lawyer by day and you're investing into private companies by night. Everyone wears multiple hats. So it's really about making sure you have the tools to be able to do that. And everyone makes these things feel so complicated, whereas really software can make it efficient for most people. So this is what we think about from the integrations perspective. And most of these we've actually done and got the capacity for inside the platform. The SME debt part to me is the next area to provide, because effectively what we've built inside CRIISP is effectively just a capital hub. Like, it's just a way for organizing information in a way that relates to how people, for capital, whether it be equity, whether it be debt, whether it be grant funding, it's just a mechanism for that process. So when we're speaking with investors, the common elements that investors are chatting to us about is, firstly, they want access to opportunities, and then when they get access to opportunities, they're like, oh, I need help with relevance, right? Because for someone like us, where we're working with 300 to 400 companies a year, sometimes then they need help with the actual sorting mechanism. So then it's about deal relevancy. Then the next part is how do you actually streamline and standardize the process? Because it's very difficult for you, when you're getting information from all sorts of different directions, how can you actually keep track of that? And the last part is the speed to action. I remember it was a family office that told it to me that once they actually engage with a deal where they're mentally locked in and want to pursue it, for them there's like a ticking timer. What are those things called? That's it. It's like an hourglass that's counting down, right? And it's the time for information. And you have no idea how many stories we hear about investors that just decide to not go with companies because of the lack of speed in which they get information. So, and this is typically the areas that investors have reported to us the frustrations. And what you don't know on the other side is we're spending so much time educating founders on these aspects of whether it becomes communication, being ready, being prepared, etc., right? Because as I said, the whole idea is we want everyone to have a seamless experience in the process, which means we have to work on both sides, both the companies and the actual founder side. And over time, and you'll see this, and this, I said, I'm very pragmatic in that this takes years to change. This space was very much driven around transaction, transaction, transaction. Show me a pitch, show me a pitch, show me a pitch. Everything we want to communicate to people about is about building relationships over time, right? Because ultimately, investments in private company, I always make the joke that it's actually sometimes harder to get out of a private company than it is to get out of a marriage. Right? And so, it's understanding that it is a relationship between two people. And so that part's really important from us from the relational side. But of course, we want to encourage that investment activity as well. So therefore, preparedness is a key part to it. So for me, this is what we've sort of worked towards in how we think about things. And from a platform perspective, sorry, I forgot to mention about the sound, that when I think about this as a product, I said this has been 3.5 years of working to this point. So when you actually go onto the web app, every single part we've tried to think about that's really got an element of all those principles that I've talked about beforehand. But that personalized deal flow is the key thing that I want people to experience, because as I said, I can't recreate myself 1,000,000 times to actually do that. So it's like, if I can provide personalized deal flow every single time an investor logs in and make sure it's relevant to them, then that's important. If companies can be providing product updates, investor updates every time an investor logs into their platform, that helps the opportunity keep in front of mind for investors. Not what was traditional, where send pitch deck, get rejection, never hear from the company again. When I interviewed Jason Kalkanis, he had the best stat. I asked him, because he says at the end of every rejection, he says to each company, please keep me updated with your progress. And I asked him, how many companies actually update you with their progress of their business? His response was low single digits. And I found that really important. So we actually built, and I'll show this in there, we actually built investor relations into it. So for me, when you actually log in, the idea is when you see that recommended list, it starts out, as preference. The deal relevancy part starts out as a preference matching, because it's sort of what you're looking for. Then the second part is, the more active that you get, is it starts to become more personalized for you. Because what we've found with you guys as investors is there's what you say you're interested in, and that's what you'd select in the sort of pre-settings, and then there's what you're actually interested in. So we'll have lots of conversations where someone's like, I only want businesses that are generating revenue, they're doing this, they're doing that. And then I ask them, which company is most interesting to you? And they tell me about a life science company. that may not be generating revenue for the next 10 years, right? And that's the weirdness about this space, but that's also what makes it beautiful, right? And sometimes it could be personal reasons as to why they're interested. Other times they just have a change of thesis during the course, and that's what's important about that deal relevancy part. Sorry if I'm just shining green lights in people's eyes. The streamlined process is also important because I want you to get access to your information as fast as possible. So we make that, so everything we've thought about from a future perspective is how to actually streamline that positioning. The FAQs, right? Once again, you've already got questions that have likely been asked by other investors. This frequently asked question management tool is so simple, but yet it makes such a difference for you and also for the companies as well. So for you as an investor, you're seeing the questions which have been most asked, but that most other investors have looked at previously. For me as a founder, I'm getting intelligence on what's important for investors with my opportunity. I never had that before. 3 to 4 years ago, I never had that. And funny enough, it's amazing how those questions can help shape the strategy of a business, right? Because what's hard thing about a founder is we're so locked in on building our businesses, we don't have that helicopter view that you as an investor typically have. And sometimes these questions actually help us get perspective into your helicopter view that you have. Auto-filling out share applications. I know it's one of the frustrations for this space is actually just the simple filling out of applications for it. So the fact it can be preset is something that we want to streamline. Or uploading your own share application if it's, if you're in a different region or so forth. Storing the venture transaction online so you've got recall for it at any time. Simple things like this make a difference, right? Rather than said, of course, most people have their own spreadsheet. We also use Cake. Right? I think Cake's an incredible, simple service for any founders, with their business. We used to use accountants and it's just a nightmare, the registry part, whereas they've basically solving the pain point for people on the online registry part. So Jason and Kane and his team have done an incredible job with the Cake software to actually do that. The investor relations part is super important as well. And he said, we've created a simple little dashboard and a simple little communication mechanism. I sent out a message to my networks this morning just talking about the software aspect. I said, what happens is that when you're building a business as a founder, sometimes it just all builds up too much. But it all builds up and then people stop communicating because it ends up being such an effort, where we've just tried to make it really easy for companies to do that. Sharing good news. Often companies get covered by media, they get featured in different industry publications, and they don't tell anyone about it. We wanted to simplify that. The messaging software. Most of you would have probably had some sort of messaging over the last few days. I said we've just redesigned that. Literally, we launched that about a week ago, that redesign. That's designed to actually streamline the communications. In fact, for the deal makers in the room, that messaging software actually can cover multiple deals at the same time as well. So not only your own room, but you can actually have, if a corporate advisor working across 5 to 10 different deals, that's all centralized in that communication point. So it's not just for the private, also in the future we'll be having conversations with the advisory side. And then obviously the conference software, I won't spend too much time on that because I did that yesterday. So look, here's some of the things that we're building that we think are important to sort of, the future of what we're building, and then also this space as well is firstly the integration. One of the big frustrations we've still got running 2 sites effectively, the Wholesale Investor site and the CRIISP site. In the next 2 weeks, they will actually be integrated. With the AI matchmaking, it's actually one way at the moment. It's for you as investors, sort of founders. We're actually working on the data aspect for the other way as well, because we as a company firstly want to understand for future introductions who's the most relevant investors for companies, and then facilitate those introductions as well. Because we understand you're busy and you may miss some deals in there, but as I said, we're always going for that 1% where we want to make a right introduction. Project X, I won't talk about at the moment, but that's a massive transformation for us, and will actually become one of the key foundations that we build our global opportunity off the back of. And then also, over the next sort of 12 to 18 months, a potential enterprise or white label version of the platform, because one thing we've proven is how to actually run deals at scale. So we want to make the software available to other groups that also run deals at scale as well, because effectively they'll be able to make their own internal processes a lot more efficient. So I've got 1 minute left, so I'll quickly go through the opportunities with WI. Obviously, the collaboration with the Wholesale Investor team, working with your investee companies, working with companies that you're working with, and also working with directors about setting up for future raisings as well. One of the challenges for us is people typically come to us when they need us, right? Whereas we want to actually get people set up 3, 6, 12 months in advance. Investment opportunities, obviously, we provide the opportunity for investors to invest in us as a company as well. So I'll be mentioning more about that over the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks. And then also the HNWI ANZ Fund, which obviously John Sharp presented yesterday as well. So we provide an opportunity for investors to invest into that. And then we've got our model for investing into some of the best sort of incubators and accelerators in Australia, and then obviously supporting those investee companies. I won't go too much into this, but just want to simplify that. From a foundation perspective, every bit of the foundations we've set up relates to, we've got an incredible 3-sided ecosystem, which you guys have experienced over the last 3 days. Obviously a recognized brand across Australia, Singapore, and the UK. Our own distribution network, which is super important. Media and production capabilities, which we didn't have 3 years ago, but now you can see it between the streaming and everything else that we actually do. And then obviously the software aspect. So from those key elements, if you can get a picture as to what we see the foundation and the future of this space, it is a lot more content driven, it is a lot more software driven, and it is providing opportunities for engagement online and then also the offline aspect as well. So that's a summary for me. There's my details. Feel free to add, I put in my LinkedIn name on there. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm in the software as well so that you can message me, and said happy to have conversations with people throughout the day, and obviously happy to make introductions for investors to our clients as well. So I've gone 1 minute over, so apologies for that. So on that note, I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to speak and tell you a bit more about what we see as our vision and future of this space, and a bit of an insight into some of our plans for Wholesale Investor. Thank you.